to Thai Productions. Today we're reviewing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1. So, Tom, what did you think of the film?
When I thought of the film, well, it's a funny question, isn't it? Because everybody, it's going to be split in half. People who have read the books and people who haven't. Now, for those of you out there who don't know, I have read the book.
I haven't.
Thank you, Ish. Yes, but so the difference is people who have read the book, they know what's going on. They understand the characters. They understand all the characteristics, and they understand all the plot points. You know, whenever they say a word like polyjuice or horcrux or hello, everybody knows what it means. Yes. But you, however, you don't.
I do not. No. I was watching the film and I got confused on so many parts. Like, there was the bit where they just kidnapped the people off the street. I was like, what the hell? And then I found out they're from the Ministry of Magic. I'm like, oh.
By watching a little further, so.
Yeah, you know. The other parts, it was just, like, I didn't really understand what was going on.
Now, the reason this is because movies, in reality, when you relate it to the story it's telling, in reality a movie is telling a short story, whereas a novel generally tells a full-length, long story. And like the Harry Potter books are decent length. They're not huge, but they're not small. And so the movie, there's a lot of information in there, and the movies, they try to, cut out all. They can't really just cut out they can't even just cut out all the non-essential things because there's too much that is relatively essential, and especially in previous films which have been quite short. There's a lot of information that a lot of viewers who have not read the books have missed. It's just they've gone in over their heads, script writing wise. Now, pause. What was the question?
Well, let's briefly describe the plot. So Harry starts out, and he's in yes, he starts off with that song.
It doesn't actually, not on this one, I think. Keep going, come on.
Oh, I was just thinking. He starts out at the Dursleys' house.
Yeah.
Obviously, and he has to go to.
They take him away from there.
Yeah.
They take him away from. We won't explain the specifics of why they had to do that because he was having a birthday and etc. But so they took him away, and then he has to go and he has to kill the bad guy. Obviously, and the bad guy is very powerful and has. He has a very small soul, but he has lots of small souls that they have to kill and they have to find. So they go on a big adventure trying to find these things, or trying very hard and not really succeeding very much, but nonetheless, yeah. So that's the plot. So it's quite common now. They've decided to split this, obviously, into part 1 and part 2, I'm sure, as everybody knows, because... In reality, because the fans, they're going to want lots of information. They're going to, even though a lot of the film, as I'm sure you would have felt, a lot of it was just not necessary, because obviously you don't understand. You're inferior.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. Because I was watching the second half
of the first half.
Yes, the second half of part 1 of the Deathly Hallows, and I thought it dragged on a bit. Yeah, spoilers alert. They're walking around the forest, and they're running away from these guys who are chasing them and stuff. And I thought it dragged on for a bit. I didn't really understand why they had to show all this stuff.
Yeah, well, because obviously, seeing as they've had so many movies where they cut out all the non-essential stuff, this one seeing as they're building up to the absolute end, they have to include as much like depth into the characters and the plot as they possibly can, so that the ending will actually be fulfilling. So that's the first reason. All the fans are going to be quite pleased that there are 2 parts and they're including as much from the books as possible. And obviously it's going to make a lot of money, so it's a win-win. The studio's happy, the audiences are so a win-win with a little bit of lose, like people like you who didn't really get it. That's alright.
I've heard like a lot of fans though actually do hate the movies because they don't think it follows the book enough.
Yeah.
So they actually hate Warner Brothers because they made the film, obviously.
Yeah, but as I've said,
and they got their little cults and stuff.
It's really hard to stick completely and utterly to the book because there's too much, and they have to cut it down. Maybe they cut it down too much sometimes. Like the 5th movie was quite incredibly short. Like really, they went from start to finish barely more than a giggle and a skip in the middle. Yes. And so by the 6th one, everyone was getting pretty confused. And that had a lot of, like, that was quite a complex book in reality. There was a lot to do there, and you don't really understand a lot. So they come into the 7th film and they just try to put as much in there as possible. What was the question?
The plot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second half, they've got a lot of possibly boring bits. I must say, the second time I watched it, there were a lot of boring bits, but I sort of just sat back and thought, oh, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? Courtesy of Eduardo Serra, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, the cinematographer. Beautiful lighting and camera, etc.
And so, yeah, it's amazing. Like they bring a world to life, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
that requires a whole department.
The most amazing thing about the Harry Potter films I've found is the characters are actually quite incredibly a lot like what you imagine them to be in the books, and they really stick to the characteristics a lot. And even though they have a lot of famous stars in the cast, which is usually a bad sign, they're actually quite suited to the roles. So that's one of the things that, as a Harry Potter fan, I think they got right, and that's the main thing, because obviously Harry Potter ultimately is about the characters, not the action.
Yeah, I just feel I'm immersed in this world of magic and spells and magical creatures.
Yeah.
What's there not to like?
Yeah. And they do have some. This one, it is quite a likeable film, and even though it is very dark, David Yates, the director, has done a good job of, and the cinematographer, they've done and sets, etc. They've done a good job of creating a dark world, rather than like the first few films, a little bit dark, but ultimately happy family films. And they've decided, no, stuff that, we're going to create some nice dark. It's a dark theme, really.
I find that quite interesting. There's a big contrast, especially from the last movie, Order of the Phoenix, to compare to like the last 4. Yeah. There's a huge contrast. It was being very violent and
they
dark.
They did change director, and obviously during the books they did advance into some quite. They got darker and longer, and so and the sixth one was more of a, rather than action, it was just building up the darkness, I think, by turning it into a teenage romance comedy and elements of horror.